Hello everybody and welcome to today's webinar, which is the 21st Century Workforce, Is Your Team Equipped for the Road Ahead? With Nick Fernando. Before we get started, just a quick word about Filtered. We are an e-learning company specializing in the use of adaptive technologies to accelerate learning and reduce training time. We won't teach you everything, just what you need to learn. So check out filtered.com to see our range of courses which can benefit you and your company. Now I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. You will have the opportunity to submit questions by typing your questions into the questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. If you experience any technical difficulties, please let us know via the question pane and the admin team will do their very best to address them. I would now like to introduce Nick Fernando, Head of Content at Filtered. Nick, if you're ready.
I am, yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Nick Fernando, as been introduced just now, and I'm the Head of Content at Filtered. I've been working in this field for just over 14 years now, and which isn't a very long time, but I think it's given me the opportunity to see the application of work-based training in a number of sectors, so that the education, higher education, charitable, not-for-profit, and commercial sectors. And one thing that struck me a lot over the years is the key skills issue and what we are doing about it, and particularly as we're heading towards this predicted skills shortage and the importance of key skills in securing business advantage for the future. I think this is a really important topic. It's also forming a big part of some postdoctoral studies I'm doing to earn a PhD by publication. So this is a subject that's very close to me, and obviously it's very close to our business as well, but this presentation isn't particularly about our business. It's primarily about why we think key skills are really important and what sort of new key skills are around and what you might need to think about in terms of equipping your workforce in the modern environment. So I just want to, before getting started, I just want to make a couple of special mentions. The first is Dr. Janet Cole, an associate professor at Kingston University. She's been a research colleague of mine for the last 5 years, and she has helped me a great deal with this area and worked with me on a number of items of research. I'd also like to thank and point out Dr. Chris Littlewood, who's one of the co-founders at Filtered. He and I have had numerous discussions and looked at this subject quite extensively over the time I've been at Filtered. And also I'd like to thank the content team who are helping me do this webinar, because it's not a strong suit of mine. This is my very first webinar, so I hope you guys will be compassionate and forgiving of my potential errors that I make during it. So yes, so let's start at the end. So hopefully you can all see this slide, and there's quite a lot of text in there, and I just want you to take a few moments to read it and take it in. And the reason I want to start at the end is because we're all very busy people, and some of you might have places you want to go to, or might be here thinking, is this the right thing for me to attend? So if you can look at the summary, you can make a good judgment about that. But there are some really important points here, and that is that the business environment has changed. You know, post-recession, there are an unprecedented number of startups. There is a much greater amount of innovation which has been generated sort of over the recession period and more so post-recession, and that's really important. And the skills and the demands of skills in the workplace and demands in terms of productivity and efficiency have increased significantly, as has, big data was a trend. Now it's a thing that's very real and it's here, and all sorts of services that we use leverage big data, and sort of access to data is unprecedented. And our employees also need to be able to look at these data sets and manipulate them, and leverage data and technology and automation, and use their human insight and human capacities and soft skills to make sense of that all and help businesses to continue to be agile, especially in such a demanding time. And so what that means in terms of helping them develop these capabilities is that we need to be able to do that in a way which is integrated into their day-to-day work, and that we make sure that soft skills are something that our employees can tap into and access and utilize at will in terms of the support available to them, either as sort of training content or knowledge resources, but having that coherent so it can provide them with performance support. So I'm going to be very cheeky and start with some questions. And these are polls. Now I've got a polling system thing here, which I'm going to try and use. And so I'm going to show you the questions and then launch the poll. So this is my first question, and it's quite a pertinent one that you'll find as we progress through the presentation. And so if you could take a moment to answer it, that would be much appreciated. Unfortunately, the webinar software we use doesn't make it very easy to present the poll results back, so I will actually read them out to you. And I'm just going to keep that on for another 10-15 seconds. So if you haven't answered yet, please do. I think the majority have. Okay, I'm going to close the poll. So there was 86% of you voted. Thank you very, very much for that. I'm just going to try and get the presentation back. There we go. So 86% of you voted, and of that, 83% of you, so an overwhelming amount, more than 3/4, have said that there is, they believe there is a soft skills gap in their organization, and 17% said no. And that's very interesting because we'll look at some statistics shortly and keep that in mind. So I'm just going to quickly write this down so I can refer to it again. And then I'll just move on to this slide. So, apologies. Although I am hoping to leverage that. This is my first webinar excuse. Right, so based on our experience around sort of researching soft skills and key skills, and was there a difference between these things, and is there a significant difference? We found, what you are probably all very well aware of, and that is that soft skills are the non-specialist skills that employees have, but they are vitally important in terms of business success. And key skills extend that by adding numeracy and literacy. And our view at Filtered is that these soft skills, so these and key skills, so these broad generalist skills are as important as the specialist skills that employees hold. And as an employee progresses through their career, the significance of those skills becomes much more important, because if they're an engineer and they are working their way up, they will then be, supporting a team of engineers, and then managing a group of engineers, and then a department of engineers, and the requirements of their skills become significantly more important. Now, I'm very sorry, but something strange happened just then. Keeping with my first webinar excuse, I'll take advantage of that. And I'll just move on to the next slide. So this is where we'll talk a bit about the statistics. So we believe that soft skills really matter, as we've said, and it's not just us, and also yourselves have said, 83% of you, that there is a soft skills gap. So I'm going to ask the next question, which is, how much of a priority is soft skills development in your organization? And I'm just going to launch this poll and hopefully get some responses from you all. Okay, I'm just going to close the poll. And 78% of you very kindly voted. Oops, sorry, just get the PowerPoint slides back. From the poll, 78% of you voted, and of that, 4% stated it's a top priority. 36%, and that's a very interesting percentage, which we'll come to in a moment, stated that it's an important priority. 50% stated it's somewhat important, so it's sort of middling in the list of L&D priorities, and you know, the list is very long. And 11% stated that it's not a priority at all. And that 11%, I think, is very interesting, and I'd be interested to hear from those who voted that it wasn't a priority, why they thought it wasn't. So if you are inclined, and obviously I won't present this in the webinar because that's putting people on the spot, if you'd be happy to share your point of view as to why you feel it's not a priority, that would be greatly appreciated. And you can either do that by typing a message in the chat, and that will go to the panel, the admin panel, or you can send me an email after the webinar. So, soft skills and key skills are really important to the industry now. At the beginning of July, and many of you may have heard about this, there was a report published by McDonald's stating that there is a significant soft skills gap in the UK workforce alone, and that soft skills do contribute a tremendous amount of value to industry, and that the size of that contribution is projected to grow. Now, the concern is that if we don't address this soft skills gap, that the UK industry won't develop or be as fast or be as competitive as other nations. And so there's also a campaign backing soft skills, and you can have a look and download the report from there, and I'm sure you'll find it to be very interesting. But we can see, just looking at the numbers, how important, if we quantify soft skills, how much value they add to industry. And then if we look at some other statistics, so the American Management Association, they did a survey in which 90% of respondents thought that soft skills were important to supporting the expansion of business. And that's a very significant number. The really interesting thing is in the next comment, the next statement in that slide is that the Association of Talent Development, they conducted a survey last year, and 92% believe that there was a skills gap. Now, the interesting difference there is that in our poll, which we just ran, obviously there's we're not in the thousands, but I believe that I think it was 83% of you felt that there was a soft skills gap um, in your organisation, and in the ATD survey, 44% believed there was a shortage of soft skills. So I think that's a very interesting comparison, in that there's a feeling that the soft skills shortage is very, very high. And we also believe that as well, which is why we're having this webinar. And carrying on with that, so there was a human capital trends report published by Deloitte this year, and in that there was significant concern about the skills gap, particularly with regards to leadership and business skills. And there was also concern about the lack of leadership and management in the pipeline for talent, particularly in terms of the readiness. And so, one of the things that we could think about, and it would be interesting to get your views. So if you would like to carry this conversation on after the webinar, maybe by email, and you're happy for that to be a sort of group exchange, then if you could leave your details, then we could maybe set up an email group and carry on this discussion about soft skills, but also look at what some of the issues are behind why soft skills aren't. We're saying there's a big, there is concern, there is a gap, there is a shortage, but it's not that much of a priority, and what we might want to think about in terms of that. So going back to the slide, we can assume that, make an assumption that there is some sort of issue around the development of associated skills. So obviously leadership and management are two disciplines or domains of expertise, and there are a number of skills within them. And it may be a case that we could do more in terms of those skills which fall within the domain, contributing to developing that and filling out that pipeline alongside identifying and progressing future managers and leaders in the organization. Another possibility is that it could be more of there is a communication issue associated with soft skills, and we'll talk about that towards the end. So let's have a quick look at some key skills and soft skills. I'm using these two terms, but actually our view is that they're somewhat interchangeable, because I hope you would all agree that numerate skills and literacy, so if you think about business writing, like writing emails, writing reports, presenting, are really important skills. So yes, but I'm using both terms here just for completeness. So we believe that these are the common key and soft skills in business, and that these are really important for employees to have a good grasp of. And you can see there's quite a few skills, and perhaps there is an expectation from us in industry that higher education institutions and post-secondary training providers are helping to develop these skills in students to prepare them for joining the workplace. Unfortunately, that state of affairs hasn't quite been the case, and what we've seen is generally that a lot of graduates come on board, and a lot of young people come on board, and they simply don't have these skills. And what we can see is like communication and problem solving, and I've left out critical thinking here, but that's obviously an essential skill to be able to think critically and then frame a problem and consider options and make decisions, to work effectively in teams, and ensuring team cohesion and numeracy. Obviously, talks about numerate skills and effective writing, but personal effectiveness as well. So, and that's time management and productivity. And then leading and managing, which has been brought up by in a number of reports, the most recent one by Deloitte, and then DDI also published a report that flagged leadership and management as areas that really need development and that there's a major concern about. I put project management in here as a key skill that is fairly common. The reason for that is because while we may not necessarily be giving everybody project management training, employees across a range of job roles are performing projects on a regular basis, and so that is a common key skill that they need. Now, that doesn't mean that we need to send every employee off to do Prince2 or Scrum or anything of the sort, but they probably are conducting projects regardless of the size of them. They may not be multi-million pound projects, they might be, but there is a great deal of project management, a great deal of projects that employees do that they do need project management skills for in order to deliver those projects. So I'm going to ask another question, and then I'm going to just jump back to the previous slides, and hopefully you'll be able to see both. But so the question is, are the skills we listed relevant to the current workplace? And I'm just going to get that slide up and keep that up for 30 seconds, and then I'll bring the poll up because I'm hoping the poll won't cover it, but it may. So I'll just keep that up for 30 seconds and shut up for a minute. Well, 30 seconds. Okay, so I'm going to launch the poll. Okay, so I've just got over 2/3 of you voted, so I'll keep it open for another 10 seconds, and hopefully those of you who haven't voted could maybe take a moment to do that. Okay, I'm going to close the poll and just bring back the slide. There we go. So 72% of you voted, so thank you very much. So it's great that such a high percentage of you are engaged with the presentation. 65% of you, so almost exactly 2/3, have said yes, those skills are relevant and still relevant. 35% of you said yes, but there are some missing. So it would be great if you could perhaps type those into the chat box or into yes, I think the chat box. Okay, so I'll carry on in the meantime because my more experienced team have told me that it's not good to keep quiet. So that was the question we asked, and thank you very much for responding. And if you could suggest other questions that are relevant in the chat box, that would be much appreciated. So let's look at what we think is the expanded scope of the soft and key skills. So our view, and it was echoed in that association of the American Management Association and Deloitte's report, is that these skills will be a very, and also the study by McDonald's, but these skills will be a major source of advantage to modern business. More so as technology continues to automate tasks. So I don't know how many of you have heard of cognitive computing, but that's actually starting to proliferate, and it's very much a case of something akin to artificial intelligence, in that it will be able to look at large amounts of data, large volumes of data, and help identify trends and respond and provide insight from that, which somebody then can communicate. And that's just one application of cognitive computing. It will make it a huge contribution to things that were taken for, that have historically been done by more specialist roles. In addition to that, the modern employee has to be, it needs to be more technology savvy, and the amount of technology and information available and data available to the employee and put on the employee is greater than ever. So in addition to that, there is a much greater demand for productivity, and there is a need to be able to navigate and work with all this information and data and all this technology, and provide better productivity and provide better business outcomes. And a really great place to see that is in the huge range of successful technology and other startups that have proliferated over the last few years, and what the amount of success they've been able to achieve and how agile they've been, not just because they're small, but because their employees are multi-role and perform a number of tasks and are expected to perform those tasks with a great level of know-how and expertise. We've also seen that bigger companies, as the structure becomes larger and more established, that agility and innovation are more difficult, and a lot of acquisitions by bigger organizations these days are focused on more on the know-how of the resources within that organization being acquired, so the actual people, than just the technology itself, and that's very significant. So while we still hold that these sort of central soft skills are what was listed, and 2/3 of you felt that sounded right to them, and a third of you felt that some were missing, and hopefully we will get some responses regarding what attendees think are missing, because that would be really useful, especially to share if there's a possibility of us sharing this information. We'll definitely send you the slides and a recording and stuff after the webinar, but if any of you want to share a point of view or an opinion with the group, or contribute to any of those questions post-webinar, you're very welcome to, and you can email us and we'll put that into the presentation and send it around. And then, so going back to the slides, our view is that given this sort of huge amount of data and the fact that the business environment has changed, and that competitiveness is dependent on on agility and the ability to rethink how we do things. We think that it's going to be really important for the workforce, particularly millennials and Gen Xers, to have this particular expanded skill set. So being able to analyze data and have the quantitative skills to do that, to be able to understand business requirements and model those into or remodel business processes, and to understand business processes better, to be able to be more efficient and be more integrated with the business. And innovation is a long-standing issue for a lot of organizations, and there are an untold amount of innovation books and articles published on a regular basis, to a similar volume as leadership and management, and that is an ongoing issue. But so there is a clear need for employees to be more innovative and to look at the business models of the organization they work for and make meaningful suggestions and contributions to those. And also to be able to understand financial information and use that to make decisions, and also to ask questions, and to be resourceful if they are budget holders, or if they are people who are allocating budgets or considering project proposals, or they are making proposals for projects or putting in business cases, that they have a good financial acumen that can help them. And to be able to exploit technology better, to collaborate through digital media, to be able to curate and to scrutinize content and information, and do that as to support a decision-making process. So to kind of think about that in terms of a set of specific, or I guess we could say themes or competencies, we could think of that expanded set as also including the following soft skills. So data science and analysis techniques. So I'm not saying that everybody should go off and become data scientists, but being able to analyze data and draw insight from that and apply some simple data science techniques is really important. The same with business processes and analysis, except that's not as complicated a discipline. It's still very important, and more so because a lot of efficiency and productivity is lost in business processes that aren't effective, and being able to analyze those and to make suggestions, to look at how they and their team and the business process works as a whole, and make contributions to that. The financial acumen, as I said, business model design and innovation. We're not saying that everybody should be responsible for designing business models, but being able to look at and engage meaningfully with their managers and leaders and the business strategy, and ask thoughtful and challenging questions, and come up with ideas which can help them at the local level as well as at the organization level. And the curation and collaboration is really important, considering that we are very connected, and we do exchange a lot of information and know-how through a range of technologies these days. Right, so I've talked about those skills, and I'd be very interested to ask you which of the expanded skills do you believe has the most relevance to your organization. So I'm going to pull up the poll question and ask if you could once again be as generous as you have been with your responses. There is a slight exception here, which is I haven't added a none of the above option. So if you don't think that there is a skill that's of relevance to your organization, or if any of them are of relevance to your organization, then it would be great if you didn't answer, but you let us know through the chat. So I'm going to launch the poll, and then you can see the five the five topic areas there, and at the moment, business processes and analysis seems to be the most popular one, along with business model design. Oh, but we're getting some radical changes. Currently, we've got 35% of you having voted. It would be great if we could get a few more. Maybe if we could, there's currently 33 attendees still participating. So if we could get that level of response up, that would be brilliant. So we're at 52 at the moment. So I'll keep it open for another 10 seconds, but currently it's looking like business process and analysis is an important and relevant skill to the organization. So I'm going to close the poll and then share the final results. Thank you very much for responding. 61% of you voted. That's great, and it was a really great uplift at the end. So thank you very much. So the final the final poll results are 61% voted. 5% of you thought data science and analysis techniques had relevance to your organization. 58% of you thought business processes and analysis had relevance. 11% financial acumen, 11% business model design and innovation, and 16% digital curation and collaboration. Okay, and that's very interesting because some of the research I've done has some slight differences. Digital curation and collaboration was quite high in terms of its importance as a skill, and as was data science and analysis techniques. That was actually one of the big themes that kept appearing in a lot of research I did. Particularly, there's a report published by Nesta, and I'll make sure that I share the links of all these reports that I've mentioned in the presentation. There was a report published by Nesta that put data science skills very high, and actually the report was about data analysis and the importance of data analysis skills in the workplace. Okay, so, and then we're just coming up to the last segment of our presentation. I hope it's been somewhat useful to you so far. And that's looking at delivering soft skills training effectively. And so some of this might be you might be experiencing in your workplace, but no, in a few workplaces there are almost 5 generations in the workplace, and that's up from the usual 3 to 4. The bulk of that being sort of millennials and Gen X employees within those 2 generations. Across that, there are vastly different habits and preferences in terms of how content and training is acquired and consumed, which is understandable when you think about the fact that you've got a generation which is very connected, and at the other end you've got one that is sort of into the retirement age that hasn't had as much time, especially early on in the formative years of their life, with technology. And there's been quite a lot of development in the last couple of years in our space of learning and development. There's a alignment was actually in that Human Capital Trends report by Deloitte was one of the top priorities in terms of aligning learning and development with the business and the business goals. That was a very big priority for 2015. We've seen 7 to 2010, which was quite niche, only 5-6 years ago, becoming quite a bit more commonplace and a lot more people talking about it. And that's for those of you hoping, well, I'm sure all of you are very familiar with it, but for those of you that might not be, it's in terms of training is where it's believed that the major sort of learning for training is on the job, and the next significant proportion is in a social context. So that's in terms of exchange with peers or colleagues and managers and supervisors, and to a much lesser degree through social network technology. Obviously, that varies depending on profession. So technologists will tend to use social networking as a bigger part of their social learning experience than other professions. And then the 10% is the sort of traditional training intervention. So that might be an e-learning course or a face-to-face training event or a workshop. And we've seen a very rapid proliferation of e-learning. The e-learning industry has grown dramatically in the last 3 years, and Docebo publish a report which you might find interesting, which sets out the state of the industry, and it has, especially in my career, which it's 14 and a half years or 14 and a bit years, it's grown absolutely dramatically, from a couple of billion to over 40 billion. It's a huge level of growth. And then also with this sort of greater demand for agility and for productivity, that there's a big push for accelerating performance, and that through improving performance support and looking at more effective ways to deliver training and deliver e-learning. And that is driven by the last point, which is less. There's a general feeling that there's less time for training of any sort, including e-learning. And so some things that we can do in terms of getting those workplace soft skills back to the front is looking at actually making it part of the agenda again. Now I know there was that for the majority it's somewhat to not that much of a priority. Hopefully, once you've digested this presentation and you've had a look at those bits of research when we send that round, the links to that, you can have a think about, is it something that you might want to spend a little bit of time promoting within the organization again. But that sort of communication is quite key. One of the things is that there is a tendency for employees to be much more focused on the technical aspects of their role, so the actual specialist skills required to fulfill their role, and less of an emphasis on the soft skills. And as that's generally not emphasized or put to them as something really important, they don't put as much of a focus on it as they do developing their technical skills. And that can create problems later down the pipeline when it comes to developing staff and progressing them to greater levels of responsibility in the organization. One of the things that can help, and this is something which is being promoted by the Learning and Performance Institute as well, and that's really thinking about learning and training more in terms of competencies and skills than courses per se, and looking at making sure that we are promoting those and making those the emphasis of our communication and the way we provide access to training, whatever form that takes. And a really important one, and given that there is less time, and obviously this might be a case of me preaching to the converted, but I'll do it anyway, is that learning is a continuous process, and it's really essential that we make sure that our employees understand that and that they are looking to continuously learn. But like I said, not just those technical skills, but those other skills as well, which are really important, for working with other colleagues, working across departments and business units, and also working with clients and external partners. So thinking about making sure that learning is treated as a continuous process. One of the things that is an issue is skill decay, and as soft skills tend to not be treated and given the same, put on the same level as the technical skills, they are subject to a greater level of decay of skill. And so ensuring that learning is continuous, not just in terms of the technical skills, but also the soft skills, is essential to keeping a productive workforce and keeping them effective. In addition to that, thinking about blending training and performance support rather than seeing them as two different things with two different pools of content and two different sets of resources can assist with that, because the employee can then work on training, so pick a competency and look to develop that, but they can also then use that content which they have encountered or not as a performance support resource, and that in turn can then draw them back into the development of that competency. And then the last point is about optimizing the learning experience, and that's obviously requires all of the above, but also curation of content. So employees within the organisation are looking at training and doing a lot of training on the job. A lot of that isn't going to be provided by us, and looking at how we can support that curation and encourage that curation and encourage the sharing of that where they're coming across really useful content, but also letting them look at our content and curate it and share it and recommending it, enabling that. And also thinking about personalization. And obviously, we at Filtered are very passionate about personalization. That's a very big part of what we do. But the effect of personalization is significant. It allows the employee to focus on a competency area, focus on the things that they need to learn rather than everything, and then access that as and when they need. And that personalization really helps with engagement, but it also helps with time or speed to competence. So whether you are thinking about us or not, personalization is a big theme. A lot of organizations, a lot of businesses in our industry are looking at personalization, or are looking to supply personalization or develop it in-house. Regardless, the effect of it is significant, and we have research that has shown that it reduces that time to getting value and the time to effectiveness, and that only can help to quickly increase productivity and sustain productivity and contribute to business outcomes. So those are the things that we think are really important. Those expanded skills, they are, we believe they're key. We've done a fair amount of research which correlates to that. It may not be something that's a priority or of use to your organization right now. So, for example, data science and analysis techniques. In this webinar, only 5% of people said that they found that was something of great relevance to their organization at this moment in time. The research we did said that was something really important. It might be a case that, in 1 year or 2 years or 3 years' time, that is something really important. But we're very confident of those additional skills contributing to business value in the modern workplace. So I just wanted to quickly wrap up by saying thank you very much for bearing with me. I've been prattling on for over 50 minutes, and I hope that's been useful. We'll share the poll results and the presentation, and we'll have a recording. And if there is any points of view or anything that you would like to contribute, please feel free to share those with us. If you want them to just be shared between yourself and Filtered, please let us know. If you are happy for that to be shared by the group, that would be great as well. So feel free to ask any questions. I've got a couple of questions here. How do you track progress of soft skills in the workplace? Any tools, software, or tips? Right, okay. So that's an excellent question and quite a big question. I think it would be quite interesting to, so there's two things. One is obviously, we can help you with that through our products and training. Two, if you have a look at the study that McDonald's conducted, it's possible you could reach out to them and ask them what they did to get those actual quantitative metrics for measuring progress. If it's thinking about things like application, so one of the things is, and this isn't going to be, there isn't a 100% effective way of doing this. But one of the things is disseminating to managers and getting the managers to disseminate to their teams that soft skills are essential, and finding a way to maybe think about the level of soft skills that employees have when they do their performance reviews, and where they'd like to progress to, and getting the managers to use that as a dialogical point in the performance reviews, alongside with whatever other indicators are being used in those reviews. But that's probably as much as I can contribute about that. So, there's talking to us. You may not want to do that. There's kind of getting in touch with some of the publishers of research, particularly the McDonald's ones, who actually were able to put pound value to things, or looking at ways to integrating it into the review process. Obviously, you also need to then think about, well, how are we connecting the consumption and successful completion and delivery of soft skills training to that performance review, and then how is that being reviewed and aggregated. So yeah, and then there was a couple of additions to the list of skills. So influencing and negotiation as specific skills and explicitly stated, working with statistics and numeracy, under numeracy, and then also interpersonal relationships, personal presentation, executive coaching, and presentation skills. So what we'll do, and thank you very much for attending the webinar, we'll bundle all of this up, share those links to the research, and send you a link to the recording. And we'll also jot down this poll information and share that as well. We do hope that you feel you can get in touch with us and look to continue this conversation, maybe as an exchange, as a group, or individually. That would be much appreciated. So thank you for your time and thank you for attending. And I'm just going to hand over to my colleague Inga to wrap up.
Great, thank you, Nick, and thank you everybody for attending today's webinar. The 21st Century Workforce, is your team equipped for the road ahead? If you have any other questions, please feel free to contact us here at Filtered. Drop Nick an email at nick@filtered.com or even tweet us at #FilteredWebinars. Once you leave today's webinar, you will receive a survey on the presentation, and we would really appreciate it if you would complete that and provide your feedback. You will also receive a follow-up email within the next 24 to 48 hours with a link to view a recording of today's webinar. On behalf of Filtered and our presenter, Nick Fernando, thank you for joining us today and have a great rest of your day.